Hello, welcome to Breakfast Central. This Thursday, midweek edition. I need to take it easy. I don't know where I'm rushing to. It's just Wednesday. Hello, welcome to Breakfast Central this Wednesday. I must say you guys are looking good. And Olive, I've never seen you so excited in the morning. I wonder did you win the lottery last night? Because off camera, you've just been very exciting. You've been, I love that energy. Or maybe it's because of the results at the National Assembly yesterday. The conclusion that the election results will be transmitted real time. No, not real time. It will be transmitted electronically.
No, what they did was a slight tweak to say it will be transmitted electronically.
But
perhaps it didn't go through because of network. We'll use backup. And trust me, majority of them will not go through because of that. So
what they did was,
but they're being realistic because man proposes and God disposes. So that's what they're doing. So in case what man has proposed fails, they will switch to backup.
So what will be the metrics?
Are you guys alleging something?
Network failure.
Are you alleging something?
We're not alleging. We're just looking at the
there's a huge trust deficit. Exactly. And Nigerians don't trust their politicians. So by leaving that lacuna, they will now make sure that the majority of the results are based on
the
Plan B.
Yeah. So what we should have done is to call Peter Aka to ask him if he will carry my trust in front of National Assembly. Yesterday, he won Nigerian flag. Green, white, green, square,
if they are not satisfied.
To find out if they are satisfied, we should have done that.
So what are the...
If they try today, Nigerian police...
What are the odds?
I've not deployed tear gas in 2 days. Their hand is jittery. If they try today, they will tear gas them.
Torchlight them.
Good morning and welcome to Breakfast Central. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. I want to urge you to be a part of the show this morning and share your thoughts with us. Are you pleased or impressed with the update that has been made by the National Assembly, by the Senate regarding the electoral reforms? The latest tweaking. Let us know on YouTube if it suits your palate. We're streaming live on News Central TV, live on YouTube. Drop your comments and we'll take comments from the comment section. I'm Olive Emodi and you're welcome to the show.
Welcome to the program. This is Breakfast Central.
Well, I'm Joe Hansen saying welcome and good morning. Thank you so much for staying with us. I think no doubt the first and the biggest story in the land has got to do with the transmission of results. So we're done with the era of transfers. But guess who showed up yesterday wearing, like what I'm wearing, white, but just that he had his hands, on his waist. And there's the way he walks, and he walked.
He had his arms akimbo.
Yes, akimbo. And then he came in a long time. And then he came with his son and said, okay, my son is here in case anybody is, tear gas, sick. My son is a doctor. Told him to join the protest.
Joe, why are you saying this?
Take care of them. So
Joe, why you sound like
are you in his mind? He's speaking.
I'm just saying what he said.
No. Because yesterday, when we were talking about Peter Obi joining the protest, we were asking, based off the reports we were getting from Nigerians, now where were the other political bigwigs? And now he has shown up. Are you people not happy?
I said, I'm just saying what he said.
Okay.
I'm a journalist. I'm reporting what happened. Anyway, the story simply is that former River State Governor Rotimi Amechi joined the protest at the National Assembly in Abuja yesterday, demanding transparency in the electoral process. Now, Amechi stood shoulder to shoulder, of course, with hands, right behind or, at the waist. Demonstrators were also there, including civil society groups and political figures, aside from others, including the likes of Peter Obi, who called for mandatory electronic transfer of results. You did have human rights activists, there's so many of them. Aisha Yusuf, who was there. We could go ahead and mention different names and so on. And one man too was there. Omoyele Sowore as well joined the protest yesterday, and he said a lot. But let's start the show first by listening to the former River State Governor, former minister, and you can name it. Just take a listen.
What's the advantage of electronic transmission? The advantage that very few persons will die on election field. Very few Nigerians. You are saving the lives of Nigerians. The current situation you have now is that every election, people are dying in their droves, in their large number. And because people are dying, they don't care. That day, Senator Abaribe will be in his mansion with police, with army protecting him. Why people like us to be on the field? And they are rigging the election. But you know one funny thing? If you think they won't rig, you're wasting time. To stop them from rigging, we must come out in large numbers.
The expectations of Nigerians. Nigerians were expecting real-time electronic, transfer to the various levels of, of the elections. But what we got is a mixture of electronic and manual transmission, which is going to cause more confusion or chaos than if we have a single tier, electoral transmission system, which is real-time electronic. That would be our preference. And I think there is need for all the opposition political parties to come together to pursue this issue. I mean, we shouldn't allow it to rest where they wanted it to rest today. Absolutely not. I don't support that.
Honorable, if not for this protest, the Senate President, sir, with all due respect, sir, the Senate came back from holidays at the end of January. After sitting for about 3 days, the House and the Senate went on recess to resume on the 18th and on the 24th of February. So if not for the pressure that Nigerians are putting, so you people will not come back to come and do the right thing. So we are supposed to drag this thing to the end of the year. Do we drag you people?
So I don't speak for the Senate, and I don't hold people for the Senate. We have and come out with a joint position.
The same National Assembly that changed everything for one day. If Tinubu wants to borrow money today, it will be under 30 minutes. If the national anthem is one day, why is electronic and electoral reform taking how many years? It is not to listen to us. It is to take action. We want action, not to listen. We are tired. We are tired. We are tired.
So if you agree with him, you agree with me when I put the votes. When I ask for the votes, when I ask for your consent, let me read the motion. His earlier motion which passed in our last sitting, he has sought to rescind that. That is in respect of section 60 subsection 3. And this is what he says. That the presiding officer shall electronically transmit the results from each polling unit to the IReV portal. And such transmission shall be done after the prescribed Form EC8A has been signed and stamped by the presiding officer and or countersigned by the candidates or polling agents where available at the polling units, because sometimes you don't see any polling agent. Provided that if the electronic transmission of the result fails, if it fails as a result of communication failure, in other words, maybe network or otherwise, and it becomes impossible to transmit the result electronically in Form EC8A, signed and stamped by the presiding officer and or countersigned candidates or polling agents where available at the polling units. The Form EC8A shall in such a case be the primary source of collation and declaration of results. So distinguished colleagues, if anybody has a counter motion, you move it later. But in the meantime, those in support of the motion as enunciated by Senator Monguno and seconded by Senator Bamoro say aye. And those again say nay. The ayes have it.
I told you.
That
was still going to be subjective.
You are right.
I'm sure Nigerians are now relaxed.
Relaxed.
They've approved it now.
No.
However, they gave
That's not what they were calling for, Joe.
But they gave a provision and said where there's no network.
What I recall that they were pushing for. Now, transmission, transfer all sounds like semantics. But the main crux of the issue was was the inclusion of the word in real time. Transmission in real time. So as they are doing it, they are doing the transmission. It's not the one that will do it later, say, oh, there was no network, or we're using this one. Now, what he's saying is, yes, they will do it too, but in case it didn't work out, we'll put up, we'll ensure. How about mandating INEC to ensure that the infrastructure, to ensure that the transmission goes through, works? Look at the suggestion that Mr. Amechi gave yesterday on the show, was talking about Starlink, and saying if they confirm, okay, there are about, I think, 7 or 9 states that have these issues. For the purpose of election, invest in that season to ensure that all of them have network, so that this can happen. If you realize that, and if they see the importance of election as a key tool for determining the fairness of any country's democracy, particularly in Nigeria, where we've had keenly contested elections, they will put whatever they need to put in place to ensure that the elections are seen, are not just free and fair and credible, but seen to be free, fair and credible by the majority. Because it's one thing for you to say it's free, fair and credible, but the majority of people don't see that. So you put in whatever resources needs to be put in place. But maybe we should hear from Peter
the National Assembly
and those protesting to see if this, this will be okay for them not to.
The National Assembly has done its part. It's left for, I mean, if this ends up in the Supreme Court, I wonder how the Supreme Court will interpret this if there's a petition that goes all the way to Supreme Court. But the ball is now in INEC's court to make sure that they have all it takes to ensure that they have the necessary infrastructure. And it's a good thing that they've identified those states that might have troubles with their network, so they can have backup services. And there's still time before the general elections. I believe we have over a year to prepare. So let's not be perennial skeptics. I do understand where the skepticism is coming from, where the trust deficit is coming from, but there's room for INEC to hit the ground running and provide us with free and fair elections. And Professor Joash Amuvito's reputation is at stake, and I'm sure for all he has built professionally, he wouldn't want to lose it on the altar of...
So, I mean, 2 things for me start out. 1, has the Senate President redeemed his image now? Is he free? Can he be let go? Because he has
Nobody
now,
was holding him.
No, he was being held accountable for
As he should.
Yes. But is he free now? That's one. If Nigerians say he's free because he has done what was required of him to do, then that's one side. 2, we also need to remember that the Senate President is not the only senator that's right there in the Senate. You do have other senators who are equally seated. Many have given kudos, 100% kudos to Senator Abaribe and the rest who stood up, and we think that's quite commendable.
Do you realize the hashtag Akpabio must go is trending on X?
Yes, no, it's
I'm
fine.
looking at the tweets.
It's fine.
Trending
You still
on
have aggrieved Nigerians. It's
Yeah, I mean,
X.
it's the beauty
but
of democracy. Everyone is not going to
if they
be
decide
on the
to
same
vote
page.
him out.
Yeah,
in the
the
Senate,
108
not Nigerians.
other senators, yeah.
So he must go, doesn't mean he will go. And in Nigeria, we know that it is hard to see anybody in power or in leadership that will resign. He had, let's be honest. But I just wanted to highlight something before we go to what Nigerians are saying. My point is this. What are the 3 ways? What are the ways in which, after this has been approved by the Senate and has been passed to law, that rigging can still, go on? What are ways in which rigging can still go on, despite the fact that they've said transmit, please, I beg your pardon, electronically? And people are highlighting ways. That's another thing we should look at. I think that's where, whether the political parties, Nigerians, whoever, they can look at ways in which, but I think one of it is, if people fail to come out, in quotes, to, last time, I remember some of the, during the election of 2023, there were no agents in polling units, so agents were no longer there. But in this case, if you sign the Form EC8A and it's signed by the polling agents, and of course the political parties are there present, and then they announce the final result and you snap, everybody should snap, everybody should have their own portal. And if 5 people have the same result, I don't see why, if you put it in the IReV, it will change. If it changes, then there's proof, and that should be made clear. So I think everybody should just relax. And let's
Well,
just see how
that
it
everybody
goes.
relaxes. You're on, you are talking though. On social media, I'm not seeing that they're relaxing. I saw one tweet, someone says, our demands, number 1, mandatory real-time electronic transmission of election results. Number 2, where network fails, that polling unit must, he put must in capital letter, Must be cancelled and election rescheduled. No buts. Hashtag Occupy NAS 2026. Hashtag Akpabio must go. We'll take some tweets on X, but let's take comments on YouTube. Chuka Ochiama says, my greatest surprise was Enyinnaya's 360 degrees capitulation. Chai! What a very disgraced anti-people Senate. Mokuye Chukwuemeka says, this was another chance for Nigerians to show that we're not joking, but we missed it again. The numbers were too low. Nigerians want transmission of results in real time, not what they passed. We will still have a glitch next year. Let's see on X what Nigerians are saying. You can keep the comments coming on YouTube, but let's go to X and take what Nigerians are saying.
Tahir Williams says, manual collation must be erased from Nigeria's electoral system. It's what gives people like Senator Akpabio confidence they will remain in power.
Manual collation, it is well.
Princess Luna says,
Nigerians, listen to me.
This new sham of a reenactment is even worse than the original thing. Akpabio has simply advanced that the results will be electronically transmitted, and that in case where there's no electricity, there will be room for manual methods. This is a deceptive clause, because at the end of the day, we all know that on that day of elections, electricity will be deliberately tampered with, and this will give INEC the prerogative to go the manual way. Okay, these devices don't work with electricity. They are battery operated, so Princess Luna, this hasn't.
We're going to have a guest who would highlight.
We're talking about
today.
Network and satellite communications. Yes. Mohad says that clause "if" is another way to rig heavily. If is a conditional. Should in case of incasity. Theo Abu says what Akpabio and his men are trying to tell you is that there will be no network coverage results. There will be no network coverage, comma. Results will be cooked regardless and sent from the polling units to collation centers manually. Why are we so pessimistic?
It can't happen like that.
As a people,
see, there are steps.
Abiodun says now all that INEC has to do on election day, say transmission failed, we're back to square one yet again.
Okay. Let me just highlight something. Remember in 2023, you had the Lagos State gubernatorial candidate, Rival. He had his own monitoring center, had his own room where he was monitoring the elections, even though he tried explaining to Nigerians that, according to him, it was rigged. Of course, the INEC and every other person had moved on. INEC had moved on, and the current governor was, congratulated immediately that he had won the elections. The point is when people say they will switch off power at the polling units, take generator to the polling units, buy fuel, start the generator. If this one fails, generator will work. They don't have internet.
Hotspots.
What are you doing? Go with the internet, fire it on, put the hotspot there. The only thing that will happen is like former River State governor said. He said, if you don't come out in numbers. But if you are there in numbers, remember 2023, we did see videos. While we were covering it here live on the station as journalists, we were at different areas. For some of us, we were in the studio. And we saw when they were counting the numbers. 1, 2, 3, right? And at the end, people shouted and people knew the results. The only difference was that they saw the results and they were happy. And it brought a new song. Remember the song?
LUP, 72. LUP.
And at the end, what they saw, after singing that song, they said what they saw on the IReV was not what they saw then. Then the question came, where are the images? People started bringing images. Look at this one, this is what we saw. There were variations of images. So the only way to, now you should be smarter to know how to stop that. So what I'm trying to say is, if as a journalist, you're following these stories, you saw all these things, those who are planning to go there, it means that you too, you have to think 100 times faster as it is. That's just it.
And at the end of the day, one of the most important elements is people should turn up. Yeah, they should come out and exercise their franchise. They need to show up in large numbers so that you can protect your vote and prevent any sort of manipulations that might happen.
Well, so there are so many factors, and I completely, wholeheartedly, and totally agree with people coming out in their numbers. However, I hope that what we saw in 2023 will not repeat itself. In 2023, the estate I was living at the time, I wanted to vote. Okay, I didn't have to vote in that estate. My polling center was in the house I was living before, and where we registered our former area many years ago. That's where our former office. So that's where my polling center was. So I needed to leave the house to come to the studio. Joe, I kid you not. People were like, they were thugs. It was like an estate versus thugs fight. The thugs were coming into the estate to disrupt the elections. So that's another angle we have to look at. This will not completely safeguard our votes. What measures will be put in place? And I agree with you that when the people come out in numbers, the people will definitely overpower the thugs. But maybe now is also another time to start revisiting whether law enforcement agents will be carrying weapons.
They need to be proactive, because there are certain areas that are known for certain voting patterns. And if they don't vote, I mean, traditionally, they vote in a particular way. And the thugs have also done their intelligence to identify this area. So they need to map out black spots, areas that are susceptible to electoral violence and disruptions, and be proactive. They need to send police units there. INEC. I mean, the Nigerian police, but we've seen that they will be political and they're not unbiased umpires, which is very unfortunate. So the people have to, one way or the other, find a way to protect themselves and make sure that their votes count.
Whatever
by organizing.
Remember the CSO, civil society organizations, the police, INEC, political parties, they all meet during the peace agreement and all that. They all have that meeting. And they all agree that, listen, we're going to follow the rules and so on. But in time immemorial, we've seen that when it's time for the elections,
the foot soldiers are not even aware that...
Foot soldiers are even... We saw videos where police officers were running away. Some were even sleeping while things were going on. Some, the thugs came and they were flogging people and all that. The police, just look behind you. The police officers were just standing there and looking. So those are the things that the opposition will have to do.
But 1 year is a long time. Like
you think so?
If there's a will to turn things around, that's if there's a will. I put that caveat there, the conditional if. But that if is a very big if.
Well, Will Smith is not here in Nigeria. If there's a will. Anyway. Let's move on to some very sad news. Terrorists have reportedly attacked several communities in Taraba State, with about 70 people feared dead as a result of these attacks. Residents say warnings were ignored before the deadly assault. The coordinated militant attacks on communities in Chanchangi Council Ward, Takum local government area of Taraba State, have left at least 70 people feared dead, according to community leaders and advocacy groups. The attacks reportedly hit villages, including Amadu and Abokpa, in early February, with homes destroyed and residents forced to flee. Local representatives allege that distress calls were made during the violent attacks, but security response was delayed. Recovery efforts are said to be ongoing, but leaders of the community warn that the death toll could rise as more victims are being unaccounted for. My heart breaks in 100 little pieces. Every time we have to read these stories, I feel that there's a part of me that has to be numb to be able to power through these stories because of how emotionally distressing, how very incredibly depressing these stories are. These are numbers. We just call these numbers like they are random numbers. 70 people dead. And I promise you that that is not the complete number. I promise you that if they do a deeper check, more people were killed. We are living at the crux of being torn apart. We're going ahead with politicking. Politics is taking the order of the day while we are advocating for, politicians are doing what they know how to do best. Nigerians are dying. They are dying in their numbers.
And I bet you it's not headline news in the newspapers.
People seem to have moved on from it. I saw a post yesterday. A certain pastor posted about it.
It should be front page news in all the national
Dami. And I had to go and comment. I said to him, because he said Nigeria is bleeding, and I can't agree more. I saw the different headlines. So what he did was he put clippings of different newspapers. People are not watching the news anymore. I speak to people who say, I don't watch the news because I want to protect my mental health. And I said to him that the hardest thing for us as TV hosts is to come here every day and discuss these same incredibly sad, heartbreaking stories. And what's worse is that the fact that we don't even see the way out. We don't even see what the
there's
hope
no
is.
breaking point that, okay, this is the last.
Do you understand?
We don't want to hear anything
I'm
about
reporting this thing tomorrow. I cannot guarantee you that today, I can't guarantee that tomorrow I'll not come back and say the
People
same
that
thing.
have been appointed to protect Nigerians are still in their jobs. You know, people still taking photo ops, smiling, you know, releasing copy and paste condolence messages. Nothing is changing.
Condemning. That's all they know how to do.
Last week in Woro, Woro and parts of Katsina, there were killers, and now in Taraba.
We're hearing Nigerian citizens being rounded up, burnt in their homes.
When we're not, I mean, there's no declaration of war. This is peacetime, and you're seeing these numbers. These sorts of numbers only happen in active war zones, in places where you have active warfare. And I mean, how can you have this sort of numbers? It's very, very unfortunate. And there will be no resignation after this. Nobody will be held responsible for this. And it's just, I mean, that's why I spoke about the value of a Nigerian life, on Which Way Nigeria Monday. What is really the value of a Nigerian life if every other day we hear reports of Nigerians in high numbers being killed? If we started flying flags at half-mast after every killing, the flags of Nigeria will stay permanently at half-staff. No.
Do you know what makes this thing sad was the fact that I was thinking, Joe, this could be any of us. And if anything happened to us, everybody would just move on. You know, life will just go on. Nothing will happen. Nothing. They would just do social media posts for you. But someone would just die for nothing. It's
painful. It's painful. The president himself had declared state of emergency on insecurity in September last year.
As the First Lady highlighted.
This is why that interview of yesterday that we talked about.
Since he did that, we haven't seen an impactful movement.
Or improvement
in quelling, stopping, and doing all necessary movements to halt these incessant killings. It is as if when that statement was made, there was a breather, and then it doubled. Because what we're seeing now, the figures we're starting to see, these figures are likened to the figures we had seen 2-3 years ago, especially in Jos, Plateau State, where 100 and something were killed during the period of the Christmas period, the Yuletide season. And later on it dropped. But have you noticed now that the consistency in the high number is becoming too much? 200, 170. By the way, some people were kidnapped in Benue 2 days ago. By the way, some people were killed in Benue yesterday. So it seems like these terrorists are coming all out. People will tell you that whenever it is election season, that you usually have high number of attacks like this. And that's exactly what the trend shows. Because these people, possibly, why are they coming out?
But that's
you
not,
might need to
that's,
take care
that's
of
not
them.
an excuse.
But that's not
you
an
have
excuse.
the means of state. You have weapons. You can deploy security services.
You have the United States.
And the buck stops at your table as Commander-in-Chief and Head of State. When former President Goodluck Jonathan was president, you need to go through President Bola Tinubu's tweets. Then he didn't give him breathing space
at all.
So why should we feel sorry? You said don't feel sorry for me. I know the problems. I'm coming inside to change things. So do something. The buck stops at Mr. President's table. Because it was the same type of energy, and rightfully so, that, you know, he was on former President Jonathan's toes that he should do something about insecurity. And I wonder why opposition
where are all those who came out to protest back then? Where are they? Whether they are the pastors, where they are the socialites, name them, the celebrities. And it's quite a shame, and I must say it here, that the so-called celebrities that people are looking up to are busy running around and calling themselves city boys or something. And look at what
how do you even have the nerve to campaign
when people are dying? People are dying. And it's why, as I wrap up this thing, it's why I would say I still don't understand in what capacity the First Lady was giving an explanation as to what has been done to provide security for Nigerians. Nigerians don't feel safe. We don't feel safe. It's not safe here. We don't feel like, you know, because our brothers are dying. And you may think, oh, I'm in Lagos, or I'm in this part. It doesn't affect me. They say, hey, what goes around comes around. One day, I'm trying to remember that quote that says when it happens to these people, no one spoke up for them. When it happens, and soon when it happens to you, there'll be no one to speak up for you. So it's just a shame that people go to their bed and then they don't know where they will wake up. They don't know if they will wake up. 70 people dying, and the world and Nigerians are continuing like that.
You know, and then you go on an overseas trip. I mean, if Joe came to my house for a visit, for a social visit, and I know that he has issues in his house, I would look at him somehow. How do you even, what pride are you
like you leave your own home?
For the most flimsy excuses, you know, holidays that are not, trips that are not mandatory that you could push forward or avoid. In the middle of a crisis, you travel. What message does that say?
Anyway, we'll continue to talk about these stories. It's very, I can't even lie about how depressing it is to talk about this. But let's bring you the top stories this morning on Breakfast Central. This morning on Breakfast Central, we're looking at the latest on the electoral reforms as the Senate approves electronic transmission. Citizens groan as house rents continue to rise. You might go to YouTube and start to drop comments about where you live and how much you pay rent there. Senate e-transmission role is still another conversation we'll be exploring as to what exactly went down in the House. And we'll be looking at Borno State partnering with the EU-ZOA Nigeria to equip youths with digital skills. And the newspaper front pages will form a part of the show. Join us this morning. Major development on electoral reform. The Senate has reversed its earlier position and amended the Electoral Act to permit the electronic transmission of election results, a key demand of civil society and voters, while still retaining a manual backup option in cases of technical failure. This decision came during an emergency plenary session where senators rescinded last week's rejection of e-transmission provisions and agreed that electronic systems should serve as the primary method of uploading results. But in a compromise form, EC8A, the traditional paper return will remain valid if internet connectivity fails.
The reversal follows widespread public backlash, including protests outside the National Assembly by civil society groups, political parties and activists, calling for greater transparency and credibility in Nigeria's electoral process. The Senate also set up a 12-member conference committee to harmonize its version of the bill with the House of Representatives with the aim of sending a final version to President Bola Tinubu for assent as early as this month. Joining us now on Breakfast Central to break down what this change means for election transparency, voter confidence, and 2027 general elections is Chairman of Abuja School of Politics, Dr. Sam Amadi, a former member of YAGA and director of Peering Advocacy and Advancement Center in Africa, Ezenwa Onwago. One welcome to you, gentlemen, and thanks for joining us this morning for this important discussion. I'd like to start with Mr. Onwago. What exactly did the Senate approve yesterday, and how does this new version of the Electoral Act differ from the earlier one that restricted electronic results transmission? Have we made progress?
Well, thank you for having me, and good morning. I think we shifted the needle just a bit, but if you'd followed the conversations that I've had on this matter, I've said that what we have is not far-reaching in terms of if what we are talking about is to deepen election integrity. I've predicated my conversations purely around the fact that whether you compulsorily, mandatorily, statutorily upload into the IReV, you simply have uploaded still pictures, and perhaps we are helping litigants. What these have done is, at the end of the day, since the Supreme Court had said that the e-transmission and such other things were not in the law. Now, if it is passed, because the treadmill of lawmaking is still going on, it is not concluded yet. There is still the concurrence, there is still assent and the rest of them. If eventually it passes, we will have satisfied that demand of the judiciary that it should be in the law. But in terms of the integrity sentinel, except you have a system that is able to compute, analyze, and sift, then we have reinforced, in my view, simply the demands of people who really do want. For the election environment, I've argued that if results are compromised through community collusion, through transactional party agents, and through corrupt INEC officials, even when you upload those results, you have simply uploaded into a viewing portal something that does not deepen in the real sense, election integrity. But as in Nigeria, tokenism is it for us. When we are fighting, whatever little thing that is thrown at us, we take it and then we're excited. But the politicians understand, even though sometimes they pretend they don't understand, they know that the excitement that follows the fact that, you now have e-transmission at law does not in any way take away the shenanigans that still go on at the PU level, which is where elections are really corrupted, in my view.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nwagu. Let me go to Dr. Sa. First off, what do you make of this? Is this a victory for Nigerians, for democracy? And do you think that this would help curb any form of trying to, in quotes, steal the people's mandate or votes with this latest approval?
Chairman is Director, Abuja School of Social and but that's by the way. Again, the question is, oftentimes we also forget that the basic work of government and regulators is to assume the responsibility to solve problems. So first, I would say straight away that this is not an improvement. It's actually, in my view, worse than what was there before. So the first version was better, that at least what it says is INEC determines. And then if INEC does not, the Supreme Court, the court says, INEC is not written in the law. So first, let's say what's the problem? What's the problem is that INEC has made improvements in their systems over the years that has restricted or made it more difficult to corrupt electoral process or, rig the election system, the vote system. Oftentimes, these systems are not foolproof, but they have worked like I said. But then we discover that you have most of the now fraud happens at the collation centers, where either through violence, either through state capture, maybe fictitious results are coming. I mean, graphic case will be in 2023, when we are seeing results mutilated. One would expect that those results would be easily discounted because essentially they call into doubt their authenticity. But those results were received. Now, it's INEC that developed IReV. It's INEC that made the regulation which started the guidelines. And the court says, INEC themselves still went to court and say, we made those regulations. We did the governorship, we did the issue with IReV, it went well. At the 2023 election, we uploaded House of Reps and Senate, but including the presidency. By the way, we are free not to use it. And the court said, yes, you are free because it's not written in the act, which of course I've argued is wrong law. I've taught constitutional law, administrative law, and I can say with some authority that anybody who says that a guideline made or regulation made portion to power in the Constitution, in the Act, is not binding, doesn't understand law. But that's it. The Nigerian court said, yeah, you're right, you can't. So that's the point here. So people are saying, if we want electronic transmission, which is not a cure-all, like as I said, but which is significant, that the Electoral Act gives INEC a 1-week window to review results. So if you rush in results from Imo, which everybody says was not the right result, INEC has adjudicatory power to see it and say, okay, this is IReV, which we loaded at the right time, signed by the people, and it went in. That's the result we had from the polling unit. SMA is right to say maybe there was collusion, community people came together and said, everybody should vote for A. Yes, that's a problem, but that's not the same problem as accurate counting. What they counted was accurate and uploaded. So INEC used it to now review that result. So this is a very important measure for electoral integrity. And so what needed to be done is to explicitly say that INEC should use that, since it is a court that caused a problem with INEC officials who are trying to hide their fraud in 2023. They go to court and say, by the way, and lawyers advise them, this is not in the act. Therefore, say we are at liberty. Because yes, you said to, that's what you want. Now, what they have done now is to institutionalize default. So you write in the law to say that INEC should electronically transmit results. But whenever there's a hitch, it can decide not to do so, and the result is okay. Okay, so the default mode for a corrupt INEC, for example, I'm not saying they are corrupt, assuming that the INEC leadership decides to swing to anybody, whether it's to the opposition or to the presidency or the ruling party, all they now do is to declare a hitch. What's a hitch? The last one hitch was that, oh, maybe server was down, Amazon saying it don't work, oh, password didn't work, oh, there was no, anything becomes, so I've not seen a law where you provide for default, you legislate an obligation, and you provide for default in very broad terms. So you are saying, if you told me, it's just like saying you should have your driving license every time you're on the road. And then the law says, but if you don't have it because you forgot, because of any reason, they should not arrest you. That has nullified the obligation to carry a driving license. Because all I need to do is to leave it or not have it and tell you, oh, as I was rushing, that's a default. I forgot it. My daughter was crying. I was confused. Because the law has legitimized that excuse. So this is a dangerous, in their desperation and in their subtlety and deception, they have now crafted something that could even enable, even if INEC leadership allows the system to work, a police officer down the road could decide not to upload and then write fictitious one or cancel things and send to the collection center and say, why did you do that? Well, there was a hitch. I mistimed the password. That's the point here. So what is at play clear is not having electronic transmission helps fraud in 3 ways. 1, it allows what happened in 2023. People can, after results have been signed in and agents taking their result, they mutilate and cancel and cancel. And the collection center is official collection. They collect it, INEC declares. And INEC has no backup to second guess that decision. That's number 1. Number 2, those of us who are also stakeholders in this election have no way of knowing what's the real result. So what Nigerians want is that when we vote, even if those voters were paid to vote, I have said that before, there are levels of fraud in the electoral system that we can't solve now. People who collect money to vote is not good, but they voted. That's their own expression of voting. The whole community was seduced by preaching to say vote for Mr. A, which is not democratic, and they all go there, but they voted. We want to make sure that after the votes are counted, the result itself is not something somebody overthrew at the collection center or at any point. And the safest guide to that is this electronic transmission, because if INEC is not corrupt thoroughly, it has the database to sit back and say these votes cannot be correct because what was sent real time meaning after completion of voting and counting and signing, is in our custody and is different from what you are sending to me. I can't accept. That's a simple thing. That's why I start with integrity. Then we move to the high level of ensuring that voters themselves, all of them, vote their conscience, ensure that communities don't intervene, ensure that when somebody goes to that polling unit, nobody is there to whisper ADC or APC or ACN. That is a second level of protecting integrity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amadi, for explaining clearly your thoughts about this. I'll now go back to Mr. Nwagu. In his explanation, Mr. Amadi was sharing about how he's never seen a case where the law is already making provision for defaults before the law has even kicked into effect, which is some of the the pushback that we've seen from this, with people saying you're already assuming that it's there's going to be issues. Now, there's also been reports citing that there are 9 areas in which network could there could be network issues, there could be problems with real-time transmission. What alternatives would you have suggested, that the lawmakers take into consideration whilst passing this law? And do you think that as is, the law as is, it's enough, for those who have been protesting, those who have been, going to the National Assembly to protest? Do you think that they will be satisfied with the law as is?
Well, the first thing I will say is that protest is a failure of is a response to the institutional weaknesses in the legislature. If the legislators and the senators have functional constituency offices, have functional means of harvesting citizens' input into the treadmill of lawmaking, you probably would not see protests. If they themselves had electronic voting machines working, we will be able to know where those who represent us vote on issues. That's an aside. So I can't guarantee what satisfies the protest. In a democracy, you don't get everything you want. When you push, because there's also limit to advocacy. When you push, there are concessions made. So it's not my way or the highway. There is going to be. So at some point, when there's a shift, and like I said, most of the shifts are always very tokenistic. Having said that, the current situation, when people say INEC should go to the IReV, there has to be a dispute. If nobody is disputing a result, INEC will not say because Dr. Sam Amadi is saying that there is fraud, then they have to go there. It has to be the parties. And the enormity, the consequence, the impact of collusion is that it stalls the ability to interrogate. Because once people have agreed, people don't just, the law is there, the extant law is clear that if the presiding officer refuses to upload results from the polling unit, he is liable to a sanction. So, but he doesn't get that sanction except there is a complainant, except there is evidence-based complaint. And I've predicated my conversations around the dereliction of responsibility by the political parties in having truly organic party agents. What do I mean by that? Party agents that report to somebody, that report to another supervisor. So you harvest the Form EC8A, your supervisor takes it and gives it over to the person who is going to collation center. And today, life has been made easy that you can have different kinds of cameras. So even if you are prevented from coming into the collation center, if you are manhandled, you already have the Form EC8 notarized. If you notarize it, you keep it. So if there is no complaint, the IReV is useless. If nobody is calling attention, the IReV will only satisfy the interest of researchers, the interest of the media, and people who, in my view, are not the main people in the electoral. So politicians, political parties, and their candidates have a responsibility to ensure that what the law says, because we dismiss we discountenance the place of the fraud that takes place in the polling units and the irresponsibility of the party agents and community leaders who collude to produce compromised results from the polling units and upload it into a system that does not do anything about the results that is given to it. That is simply a repository of votes. So That for me is critical in determining the integrity of the election. You can pinch on the regulator. The regulator, if he's compromised, and the people who should complain are also compromised. I have seen people who come to collation center empty-handed, complaining about a manipulated result. But the manipulated result was actually signed up by their, agents in the polling unit. And so it's clear. Then that is important. So if we say, let us completely take away discretion, the way I hear it, the conversation, you can't legislate, you can't legislate. Where you are now, when they say you lack initiative, what are they saying? They are saying simply that you are not able, if the law, because we are dealing with a sociological situation. You are dealing with a backward, relatively backward system outside of an election. Your election can be better than your infrastructure. If you argue that, the internet penetration debate is not important, what you should do is to quickly get Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy in one room, the service providers and the Nigerian Communication Commission, NCC, and the INEC and other relevant stakeholders in one room, and say truly, we have 2G, we have 4G, we have this, and in some places we don't even have at all. Can we transparently put out the places where this exists and where it doesn't exist, and say where we can do this quickly? Election in Nigeria is not a normal election. Inside Nigerian election, ethnicity is inside, religion, everything primordial is thrown into that casting of vote that you are seeing. So if you delay by 3 hours in uploading that result, it can cause mayhem. It can cause mayhem. So we have to be nuanced. We have to be nuanced in the way we want to take away discretion and say, if there are sanctions for non-use of it, the law is clear. If you derelict, if you don't do this, there are many ifs in Nigerian election, but those ifs will be sanctioned if the relevant authorities. But the gap for me is that you have a lazy and indolent political party, membership. In fact, where you don't even have membership, because somebody can be party agent for A today, and then later in the afternoon he's wearing this thing of party B. So transactional nature of our party agency, the community collusion, makes nonsense of the laws that are put there. If people agree to compromise election in their polling units and even in their, and there is nobody complaining, the complaint will be left for us in News Central, will be left for all of us to be shouting. But the real people who participated in the election have sold their parties, have compromised the process, and stand aloof and give the impression that they were not the ones who compromised those processes. And that's what we have seen. So we need to go much more beyond that. Let us have e-transmission where it is possible, e-collation where it is possible, and ensure that it is nuanced in a way that does not hamstring the hand of the regulator so completely that even those who want to do good can no longer do good.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to bring back Dr. Simon Mahdi into the conversation. Now, Dr. Simon Mahdi, the version we saw yesterday had real-time omitted from it. And what does that do to what we now have? That will be harmonized and sent to the presidency, to the president for assent. How much of a difference does it make in the overall scheme of things?
I think for meaning, it doesn't make much the difference. I mean, real time, we suggest what is real time. So people have argued that if you say real time, does it mean real time like electronic voting? You vote now, it enters. So I don't think real time really matters. What the people mean by real time is that after you have signed, you upload. So it may not have much part. But let's get back again. INEC's official documentation as at 2022, says they have 93% capability to electronically transmit. In 2022 election, there was no single incident INEC said of not uploading a House of Reps or Senate election across Nigeria. See, the problem with Nigeria is that we're not evidence-based. Where we start from is, there are many things that we do today. If you are going to do law school anywhere in the country, they will ask you to upload to the portal. Many applications, you upload them. POS we run. POS is like the same intelligence. It records in the bank's balance sheet. With POS, the bank sees that you have withdrawn your money. The transfer goes and money is credited. Nigeria has actually, interestingly, one of the fastest money transfers in the world, which is clear what we call late commerce advantage. Late commerce into the technological frontiers have faster leap forward. When I was in the US, I wasn't having, when I came to Nigeria, I was having better ATM services than America. In fact, we had more people using ATM here than I was in the US then. So the point is this: we shouldn't fetishize technology. And the point also is, and I agree with Ezenwa that, look, the parties themselves are, lazy, sometimes unfocused. And I made that case just two nights ago to a group of party leaders that the 2023 era was actually mostly their own, because they never engage INEC strategically. If you go to, take for example, other countries in the world, electoral bodies are like quasi judicial, they're like a court. Parties filing, written by their lawyers on every issue, and they debate it and take a position. So we need more rigor, and I agree with him. But what's also very important is that we can't look at all the sociological issues together. We cannot, for example, in the US today, race, religion plays key role. It doesn't matter. Latinos have a vote where they block. Afro-Americans are going to block. So what I'm saying is that let's retrieve everything for these shadowers and focus on few things. For me, it's clear what I want to see. I want to see an election. No matter how people decide to vote, if the votes count equally, and that's the theory of political equality behind democracy. And what that means, therefore, that I want to focus on ascertaining what was actually voted. And that's why this IReV is not just a custodian, by the way. This IReV is INEC's own effort to create a process to deal with perceived failure. I give you an example. In 2017 or 2019 election, Imo State, Senate race, the candidate on gunpoint forced a returning officer to declare results for him. And after the returning officer says, this result is fake, he told INEC, I was forced to declare it under gunpoint. And there was a debate inside INEC officials, some of them who are corrupt, wrote, we can't do anything, declare, they go to court. They know that the dynamics of litigation frustrates the man who was declared loser. But some of them said, no, you cannot think that a valid election, a valid vote is that one that somebody under gunpoint, and the officer says, I didn't sign this. End of the day, they declared the guy who used gun to obtain results. So what we are saying is not that, look at US, look at Kenya, look at Ghana. India is bigger than us, more complex, in fact has more rural areas. But elections closed down, electronically transmitted. People, in fact, even journalists have a right. We should be seen. People should be going to. Have you seen the collation center of INEC and the ones of other countries? They all is automated. INEC on the sit there, somebody will come flying from Sokoto, tell us that he's delayed for 4 hours, and when he come there, he reads something he likes, and they say accepted, boom, and at midnight, that is a sham. That's nonsensical. You have to be like an exchange. You see people we see on the dashboard, see the results coming. That's what it is. The footprint closes at A, result is in. We note it. Elections, and I agree with him, the major stakeholders are the party, but everybody says stakeholder because democracy votes. The people who voted. See, it's not a person, and I've argued, even in going to court, that the idea of local standard should expand. The people who vote are arguably more important in democracy than the people who run election. Because they're the people whose mandate to govern. That's the people who say, democracy is built on the idea that nobody should govern me except I choose him. So the first person who is a stakeholder is the voter. And the voter wants to make sure that we actually voted for A, not B. So there's no reason why people who voted cannot go home and put on the television and see you people report that in their polling unit, the same result they voted is X, and not wait after the ritual or some people gathering and then they'll use police like they do. Even the governor was ordered out of the election center with his team. So it becomes a case of either the governor has a stronger rigging, military violence, or the ruling or the federal party has more, and they slug it out. End of the day, people push it. That's not. Technology is still more reliable than human beings because we can see when it goes up that this is there, and that's a check. That's why should APC in 2022 APC fought hard. All the APC senators did not vote for electronic. Buhari had to save us back. They voted no. Why? There must be a reason why people in opposition fight for electronic voting. People in the ruling party, whether it's PDP or APC, fight against it. Why? Because they know that it has a liberating feature. It can constrain their rigging strategy at a scale. And that's what I want to focus on. So, yeah, there are many issues, but we have to have clarity that let's address the one. But INEC, look at Beavers today. Beavers has brought certainty. Today, nobody argues whether you go and say 5 million voted for you when the people who are accredited 2 million. The courts now say void because the law say if by any means the number of total votes is more than number of accredited voters, void it. No dispute as to whether Beavers has malfunctioned. Beavers has never. Why? Because when the law mandates it, there are discussions for things in the act, but there should be discussions for some basic things that you can process. There's no discussion, for example, on who is qualified for election. It's there. It's not for you to go back and say, this man has WAEC, but he didn't have WAEC, but he speaks English very well. No, the law says some things have to open and close. The law says, this is it, you do it. Discretion comes in judgment. You have to look at those petitions, sit in the panel, review them, look at the IReV, and make a call. But we want to see some programmable behavior in polling. When it closes by this time, do this, you do it. When it's not done, it's voided. It happens everywhere. Some elections, some results are voided. In fact, the Electronic Act says INEC can void those results if there's evidence of fraud. And what I'm saying that the IReV helps you make that decision. It is true that Nigerians, party agents are corrupt. But look, we don't solve corruption through some kind of osmosis. We solve corruption when the incentive for corrupt behavior is low, when the possibility of success, and I've argued this, that if you cancel one election, one federal, if I was an INEC official, I would be prone to cancel a national election. When people spend billions and rig election, and I cancel it, then you internalize a control mechanism. So somebody knows, will I go and buy an INEC chairman or INEC official or police officer or IG with billions, and then somebody will void it or the court will void it? That's the problem. We have this big corruption. If the courts have cancelled a major presidential election because of fraud, everybody will internalize due process and caution because they know that you're likely going to lose. So that's the point. I want to see much more consequence and control of this corrupt behavior.
That sounds pretty much like maybe a roadmap towards where Nigerians will be looking forward to work on. I really wish we could continue this conversation, but it seems very much interesting. Unfortunately, our time is up. Please do well to avail us more of your time when we come calling, because we know it doesn't stop here. Dr. Sam Amadi, I also watched one of your videos where you had mentioned and quelled the fear the Nigerians have concerning beavers, that it will go off and so on. And you explained clearly about it not being dependable on power and so on and so forth. Maybe when next we have you, we'll take a look at that. We'll also look at the opportunities that Nigeria can tap into the new law. We want to believe everything is not all negative. There are positives to it. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's bring to you what's coming up next here on Breakfast Central for the next hour. Coming up next, we'll look at a story that's got to do with housing. Please go on YouTube. Tell us how much you pay for rent. Currently, it's a bigger conversation. Digital skills empowerment, we'll look at how Borno State Governor is doing that. And ending inheritance disputes. Something to talk about. Stay with us. Welcome back. Nigeria's growing housing shortage, estimated at between 15 and 20 million units nationwide, is worsening affordability challenges, particularly in Lagos and Abuja, where rents have risen beyond the reach of many working-class citizens. Critics blame landlords, property agents, and market speculation for inflating demand and pushing up prices. Not by 100%. In most cases, you find houses have been pushed up to 200%. Many residents are now calling for urgent government intervention, including rent caps, better transportation links, and large-scale housing construction to ease the pressure.
Frustrations have spilled onto social media, with Nigerians lamenting that even decent salaries can no longer secure modest accommodation. One user noted that an annual income of 2.4 million naira is still insufficient to rent a good apartment in Lagos, while others warned that the current rent bubble is unsustainable. In Abuja, tenants face similar struggles. A resident reported being told that 1.5 million naira could no longer secure a two-bedroom apartment in Wuse. And I dare to say that that's really very ambitious, because some people are paying that for one-bedroom apartment. And this we're talking about was with additional agency legal fees adding up to 30% of the cost. Now, joining us to discuss this is strategist and fair housing advocate Ayodele Adio. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Good to be here.
Before we go into the conversation, let's give a bit of idea and background into, the regulatory agencies. Amid growing complaints from tenants, attention is now turning to the Lagos State Real Estate Regulatory Authority, LASRERA, the agency legally mandated to regulate real estate transactions in the state. Now, what are the key duties of LASRERA? Regulating real estate transactions and practices in Lagos State, registering and licensing real estate practitioners, agents, and developers, protecting the public from fraudulent and real estate activities, receiving and resolving complaints between tenants, landlords, and agents, monitoring real estate charges and ensuring transparency, setting standards for ethical conduct in the sector, creating a database of registered practitioners and property transactions. Now, despite these many responsibilities, many residents argue that illegal charges, arbitrary rent hikes, and exploitative agency fees continues unchecked. You may now head to our YouTube channel to share your personal experience. We've seen a few comments that we'll take from YouTube about what the current realities are for you. Where do you live? How much is your rent? Has there been an increase? What was it before and what is it now? We're streaming live on News Central TV on YouTube. Mr. Adio, the rent crisis is one that is heartbreaking. Even in a number of us that live in estates, we go to the estate WhatsApp group, and people are lamenting about rents being increased to the tune of 100%. And you would wonder why this is happening, especially because people's income is not increasing. How many people have had 100% salary increase in the past 1 year that they're paying rent? So what would you say is the reason why we're here? Why citizens now have to pay an arm and a leg to be able to afford decent housing in Lagos and in Abuja? I don't know if it's, if that's the reality in other parts of Nigeria.
Well, I mean, there's a philosophical root to this crisis, and that philosophical root is the worldview that property or housing is going to be seen purely as a market asset and not a public good. And once you view housing purely as a market asset and not a public good, you stop asking the question who is going to live in these houses. The question you start to ask is who's going to pay the highest for this property. And that has led us into the crisis that we are currently experiencing today. Of course, the biggest share of this responsibility has been the utter negligence of the political class that have allowed this problem to fester, largely because there has hardly been any meaningful intervention by the state government to intervene in this market that is truly crushing middle-income people and has completely excluded those at the lower rung of the ladder. And this is even going beyond just the housing crisis. What is likely to escalate into is going to be a social crisis, because the truth is, when people can no longer afford to pay their rents, and they can no longer afford to take care of their families because of the mounting bills that they have to deal with, corruption is going to fester, crime is going to worsen, and people have to cut corners to just survive. And we cannot have a society where, because people cannot cope with the reality of rising costs, start to take laws into their hands or begin to get agitated. That portends a very dangerous future for us, as a people. And I think that fundamentally, that lack of intervention from the state government to have allowed this crisis to continue to fester has led us into this crisis where people are drowning in debt and are struggling to just cope with basic living expenses.
Before Gbenga goes on, let me just read a comment from YouTube. Chuka Ochiama says, house rent in Port Harcourt since last year has been the exclusive reserve for the very rich. A bedroom flat ranges from 1.5 million naira to 2 million naira.
Yeah, it's a problem. Listen, you see, the most annoying part is that there is a huge divorce between the rents that you see in the market and the economic realities of the people you expect to pay these rents. So like you alluded to in your introduction, the income of the average Nigerian or the average Lagosian has stagnated over the last decade. In fact, I'm even being generous to say it is stagnated, because the average purchasing power of the average Lagosian has plummeted by at least 40% over the last 5 years. So in real terms, your income per capita has crossed from about $3,000 to $800 as an individual. And in that same period of time, rents have gone up by 150%. So explain to me how people whose income has stagnated and plummeted over the last decade are supposed to pay rents that are climbing by over 100%. Now, it's not just bad enough that these rents are going up at an astronomical level. Is the way and manner in which these rents are being implemented. So you can just wake up one morning, 4 months to when your rent expires, and you get a very nice letter from your landlord that, listen, that 2 million you want to pay in 4 months as your rent has become 4 million naira. And then you ask the question, how are you supposed to meet an extra 2 million naira in the next 4 months to be able to pay that rent? And you see, these things continue to happen because it looks to me that there is complete inertia from the state government, and you cannot let this happen.
Now let's talk about this from economic point of view. The landlords are also Nigerians. We've seen runaway inflation. They go to Nigerian markets, and they're in this not for altruistic reasons, because it's a business. I mean, they're there to make a profit. So when the price of fuel, food, general inflation, how are they supposed to survive? And also, the state governments are not providing alternative housing. The basic principle of economics is about demand and supply. If you flood the market with state-owned cheaper alternatives, of course, it will make the market very competitive, and then the landlords won't be able to, because people have alternatives. So now we're left to their mercy. Do you think we're being too hard on the landlords and the homeowners?
So you're right to say that it's not a landlord problem per se. And you're right to also say that we've had a supply problem because the state hasn't been investing enough in affordable housing, and it's not been investing enough in social housing. I don't even think that the state has invested in social housing in the last 20 years.
Luxury. You will love
right.
it.
So you have a situation in Lagos State where public land and public incentives have been used to build housing that has excluded the public, right? And that has, led us to a situation now where there is a crisis that you really and truly cannot solely blame the landlords, because it's a market that it's completely, where demand has completely outweighed supply. But the reality is, right, you have to work and chew gum at the same time. While you deal with the supply issue, we also have to regulate the rate at which these rents are going up. And I give you a typical example. Think of a city like Paris, for instance. 25% of the homes in Paris are now social housing. So the government has intervened to ensure that 25% of the housing stock in Paris are social housing. In fact, they have an ambitious goal that by 2035, 40% of the housing stock will be public housing, right? And that's because they understand the reality of the working class. But even more importantly, they've also stepped in November 2018, if I remember correctly, to put together an 8-year policy to regulate rent hikes. And they've done that since 2019 when it kicked off in about March, up until this very moment. It's supposed to expire in 2026. And Parliament is debating whether to extend it or not. But there has been a study conducted.
And that's a free market economy.
And that's a free market economy. And there's a study that shows that indeed it helped reduce rental costs in Paris. And even more importantly, as people usually, as neoliberalists will always debate, it hasn't intervened in the amount of supply coming into the market, because usually people will tell you that if you put rent hikes, landlords will not build and it will kill. But that's not being the reality in Paris. So my argument is very simple. There is inflation. How many percent is it now? They say how many? 15, 20%?
24 or so?
Okay, let's say 25%. That is inflation of 25%, right? Landlords can raise rents by 25%. And you can give a window
and it's fair
of a 5% cap on that 25%. So, okay, you're hedged at 25%. And you can make another extra 5 to 10%, depending on the market reality in your locality in Lagos. So you're left with an average of 35% increase that has been wedged against inflation. And that is fair game. So, but the idea that people can simply raise rent by over 200%, I think is completely ridiculous, and that cannot and should not continue to happen.
I also want to look at this, because if you said 25%, anybody who's paying a rent of 2.5 million now,
yes,
and then you add 25%, that's about 625,000.
Yes.
Right? So give or take, you're paying about 3.25,000.
Yes.
Which is not bad.
Yes.
But what we have now is, if one is paying rent of 2.5. I mean, let me just go with the reality on ground. I mean, I personally know what the rent is now, and then I have friends and family members who were paying 2 million, and then they are being told just now that, listen, you have to pay 4.5.
Yes.
I mean, that's over 100%.
It's ridiculous.
The big question people are asking is, how do we get out of this doldrum? How do we leave this particular situation we're in? Because when I spoke to a house owner, we're discussing, and he said, listen, say all you want, Joe, say all you want on TV. Like he said, you know, go work. Because the government don't build houses.
Yes.
The cost of cement is expensive. It's 10,000 naira for a bag. So they should come and tell us.
Yeah.
And we're still going to pay in quotes, the area boys, the urchins, every other thing. There's land use act to pay all of that. They should come and tell us. They shouldn't tell us, rather, how we're going to regulate our...
But it doesn't make sense. If they are doing 100% increment and inflation is at 15%, make it make sense.
So how do we handle that?
I mean, listen, again, that's why I said we have to work and chew gum at the same time. You cannot solve this problem without addressing the supply side, right? So government has to be deliberate in raising the amount of supply in the market. And I've argued consistently that government has to be building nothing less than 20,000 housing units every year, right? At the very least, it has to start with that. So you have to increase the supply coming into the market. You also have to dismantle the current public-private partnerships that the Lagos State government has engaged in over the last 10 years. The Lagos State government has no business engaging in public-private partnerships that are building houses in Victoria Island and in Ikeja GRA.
It's not even mass housing.
Exactly.
They have demolished
selling houses at market rates.
They have chased people out of areas saying overriding public interest just to build luxury houses.
Exactly. So those things cannot work, right? So you have to address the supply issue by, investing in enough public housing, social housing.
How can they start? When? What's the time frame?
Again, see,
it's not like they're not building.
Let's go back memory
to be honest with you,
it's not like they're not building.
To be honest,
but it's who is getting the houses that are being built.
No. So again, you've touched on that nerve, and it was sad. I forgot to bring the documents because I wanted to show you from their own reports the amount of housing stock that they have built over the last 20 years, and I can tell you for free that in the last 24 years, the current party that is running Lagos have not built the amount of housing Jack Conde built in 4 years, right? But let me even tell you the sad part of it is that even many of the houses that have been built, mostly even by public-private partnerships, are priced beyond middle-income people. So you have these houses in Victoria Island, you have some in Ikeja, GRE, that are priced at market rates, right? Of course, you have some in Abramade Soya and a few of them here and there. But even the ones that are reasonably priced that you can access, right? Many of them are empty as we speak. And you know why? Because people who had the information that these houses were going to be built have already bought them off, right?
All right.
And then the third tier are even the ones that are even available that you can even access, which is minuscule, right?
Okay.
You're expected to put down a lump sum to be able to pick these houses because you have no mortgaging system.
That's another
that says that Benga can simply put a 30% down
and pay over the course of 10 years.
15,
you know what? Let's go on a very quick break. We'll come back. I'm seeing comments. You know, someone has shared how much he was buying cement at the time he started building his house and what the current reality is. We'll go on a break, and when we come back, we'll continue the conversation about housing and the challenge that it is in Lagos and Abuja and Nigeria in general, really. Welcome back to Breakfast Central. We're still looking at the cost of housing in Nigeria. I'll take a comment on YouTube. Of course, we're streaming live via New Central TV. Melvin Oriawo says, building materials have skyrocketed. When I started my project 2 years ago, cement was 2,000 naira. Yeah. Now I'm buying at 11,500 naira. Sand was 70,000 naira. Now 150,000 naira. Rod was 7,000 naira. Now 15,000 naira. I'm not talking about other things. So how do you tell somebody like this, who is paying exorbitant rates, to then cap his rent within a specific figure?
So to be honest, again, like I said, I understand the reality. And when I'm talking about rent regulation, I'm not necessarily talking about the new tenants that is coming into the new building, right? So the housing, we're already living in buildings already. The houses have already been built, right? So on what basis are you increasing by 200%? The houses are built.
You're not refurnished.
So my argument is not for the new stock that are coming into the market,
already existing
right?
ones.
So you can price whatever you want to price coming into the market, right? And it's a willing buyer, willing seller. So if I see your property and I want to pay 10 million for it, that's fine. I rent that property for 10 million. But when I do rent that property at 10 million, my argument is that going forward, you can't wake up one morning
and say pay 20 million.
And say pay 20 million.
Do you know
you can't have such an unregulated
Do you know the way they will go around this?
Sense.
Do you know the way they will go around this? They will then typically, they shouldn't increase rent in the first 2 years. After 2 years, they'll tell you they have a family member who needs the house, and then they will evict you, increase the rent, and put someone. So I feel like it's a catch-22 situation. I don't know how we can get out of it.
That's why you cannot just solve the problem on one end alone, right? You have to use multiple instruments at the same time. So while you're addressing the supply problem, there also has to be enforcement. So take Lekki 1, for instance. Lekki 1 was built as a purely residential area. 40 to 50% of Lekki 1 is now commercial.
Commercial, yeah.
And I think I'm even being
modest.
I think it's more than about 65.
So what we have to do is to ensure that places that are supposed to be residential are purely residential. So you don't allow commercial entities to creep into places like Lekki 1. And if you want to let out your place to a commercial, you pay premium. And that extra that is paid as premium goes into funding social housing. We also have to ensure that people cannot simply run Airbnbs arbitrarily in places, like Lekki and Ikeja and things like that. Because the truth is, these Airbnbs are not taxed in the ways that hotels are not regulated like hotels, and don't have the overheads that hotels have. But they are pushing prices up because many of these Airbnbs are built by people who don't live in Nigeria, who let the houses out. And really, Benga, if I can make a year's rent, what used to be a year's rent, in a month from my Airbnb, why am I going to let my property out for rent, right? So we cannot allow Airbnbs to proliferate Lagos unregulated. It makes no sense to me, especially when those Airbnbs are situated, in residential
just before
areas.
We go, LSDPC is the Lagos State Property and Development Corporation that is meant to build social housing and all of this. And you mentioned something very instructive and sobering, that in Jack Conde's 4 years, he was able to build what this APC government hasn't built in 24 years, which is a big, big indictment and a shame on the government. What did Jakonde do that they can't do now?
Nothing, it's just the worldview.
And then the technology is even, you can build
better, even better
the
now.
technology is better
More
now.
machines.
Benga, you don't need, it's not about a level of sophistication or a certain educational attainment that will make you drive some of these policies. All you simply need is a level of empathy, right? And a change of worldview. I keep hammering that this idea that you can use, and I'm glad that you mentioned the LSDPC, because you can't continue to use public land and public incentives to drive public housing that excludes the public, right? Because you have to view housing again, not just as a market asset, but as public good. Because houses are not like designer t-shirts that I can decide whether I want to buy them or not. They are not like, you know, a five-star meal in a restaurant that I can decide to cook in my house.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs, yes.
It's a fundamental need. It's a fundamental right. Every one of us have to live somewhere, right? And to that extent, you cannot just allow it to be completely unregulated, especially like I mentioned earlier, when even many of the most capitalist societies in the world are regulating housing. So you have to solve this problem in a multifaceted approach. Because while we're dealing with the supply issue, which starts with a fundamental acknowledgement that people do need housing, and we have to view housing as a public good, it would also inform your city planning strategy, which has also been absent in Lagos. You asked the question when we're off air, why aren't people living in Badagry, right? People would live in Badagry if you can connect them to the central business district within an hour in a predictable manner. So the problem is also a lack of connectivity around Lagos.
Road networks.
And road networks that make people commute from their place of residence to the place of their work. So if we're able to fix connectivity issue, improve the supply into the market, and then regulate effectively, I believe that we're going to deal with this issue decisively. But this idea that we have a hands-off approach, the political elites are just simply looking out their window while the people are crushed under the weight of these heavy rents, I think is highly insensitive. It is really insensitive, and
it is insensitive.
Something has to give.
And everyone is feeling it. We're all feeling the pinch.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We'll continue to shine the spotlight on the rent crisis in Nigeria. But now we're going to head to the National Assembly as we discuss the electoral reforms, the latest update, how Nigerians are receiving it, and what the next steps are after this break. In the past few days, or do I say weeks, Nigeria's National Assembly has found itself in the center of intense public scrutiny over how it conducts its legislative business. Late last year and early this year, controversy erupted over the tax reform laws after discrepancies emerged between what the legislature passed and what was later gazetted and made public, prompting civil society groups and political figures to call for investigations and even suspension of some of those acts. More recently, the Senate's handling of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill has sparked widespread debate. Amid protests and legal warnings, the upper chamber initially moved away from making real-time electronic transmission of results mandatory, a proposal seen by many advocates as essential for enhancing electoral credibility ahead of the 2027 general elections. The chamber eventually amended the bill to allow for e-transmission without the real-time specification. Yet, critics have questioned why the Senate's processes seem opaque at crucial junctures, why some amendments are altered or removed without clear flawed debates, why public trust appears eroded, and why modern legislative practices like electronic voting or recorded individual votes are not routinely carried out. Joining us this morning is former lawmaker and former governorship candidate of the Labour Party in the 2023 elections in Imo State, Senator Ethan Achono. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
All right. I know that you've been following up with the issues that have brought the National Assembly to the spotlight, but do you see any much difference between what was passed, what has now been passed, as to what was passed before that led to the protest, the Occupy National Assembly protest? Do you see that much of a difference?
Most sincerely, there is not much difference in what was passed yesterday, because it has to be made mandatory. Electronic, real-time electronic transmission of votes must be made mandatory to make sure that our democracy survives. That's my take on that. Okay. So I've not read the details of what was passed, but from what I've been gathering from social media, nothing has changed.
I mean, as one who has followed closely the political landscape in Nigeria and having thrown your hat into the ring, do you think that the harmonization of the Nigerian Senate had to come this far before they were pushed to review what was initially agreed? Do you think Nigerians should push even further, or do you think that the lawmakers should be able to just think about doing what is right for the benefit of Nigerians and for democracy?
Majority of the lawmakers should simply do what is right. And then, from my own point of view, they are making this government look weak, which I don't think is in the best interest of the APC administration. Because let's ask us this question: how can a government, a party that has 30 governors out of 36 in its kitty, they are afraid of a real-time mandatory electronic transmission of votes? So it means that they're doing something wrong. And as a government, they have enough time to make amends before that 2027 election, if they really want to govern Nigeria. So I believe that they're not doing anything in the best interest of this administration. They should do the right thing. Create enough confidence within the Nigerian population to support this government. So, but if they think that what they are doing is in the best interest of this administration, well, I have stopped commenting after my last World Press Conference, because I'm tired of talking about Nigeria, but I had to lend my voice because this is a very important legislation. It will save our democracy if we do the right thing. So I believe the Senate is capable. I'm surprised that Abaribe, when he raised that issue of everybody voting and Nigerians seeing who is voting what, had to withdraw it. That's what should have happened, so that the constituents will see what who they sent to Abuja to represent their interests are doing. That should have been the right thing to do.
Okay, sorry, you said you stopped talking about Nigerian issues. We just want to know why. And why are you disappointed in Abaribe on him withdrawing initial stand, saying everyone should vote?
I do not know what transpired. Okay. So from what I gathered from social media, so I can't really condemn Abaribe because I don't know what transpired actually. But I wouldn't have withdrawn it if I was in his shoes. But that was the right thing to do, unless it had something to do with legislative procedure in the Senate. So having said that, I'm tired of Nigeria because Nigerians they're not doing the right thing. They are not at all. You could see all the issues I raised in my last interview. This was the same scenario I watched during Jonathan. If President Jonathan, wherever he is watching me now, will remember when he hosted all the PDP National Assembly candidates in the villa, I stood behind. I deliberately gave a gap of about four tables. I sat alone, gave a gap so he could be seeing me. After the meeting, when they stood up to greet him, I refused to stand up. I refused to go to him because I was disappointed. He was my friend. I supported him throughout his how many years. I was part of the whole struggle. But at the end, he trusted the wrong people. And Mr. President is making the same mistake. Remember, in my first interview after my election, I asked him a question. I said, where is Jagaban? Is he not this man who ruled Lagos, who was able to organize the Southwest? Why is he bringing the characters he's hanging around with now? Okay, like in my interview last time with you people, I said this man brought, for the first time, a president brought the correct programs. I said this because I believed in them. Those I even sponsored bills in that regard, like subsidy removal, like not exporting our solid minerals unless they are processed locally up to a certain level, even primary stage. All these things, most of the things he's doing, this tax issue, I support it, but they are doing it the wrong way. You see, so either the people who are advising him, who are working for him, and then the way they are running their government, it's like they don't. Sometimes I wonder whether they believe that he's going to contest the 2027 election. It's as if they're just there for whatever they can get, all the people around him. And then this thing he's doing, concentrating on the Southwest, you know, it's not in his best interest. There are so many things. This man brought the good policies that, if well implemented, will make him the greatest president in Africa. But they're going about it the wrong way, you know?
Okay, Senator Enyinnaya, let's focus a bit on the 10th Assembly. You had the privilege of sitting in the red chambers, so you're in a very good position to educate us on this. We've seen discrepancies in the way the 10th Assembly has gone about passing laws or in this legislative process. First was with the tax laws. A member of the House of Representatives, Abdul Samad Dasuki, did come up and say, look, what was passed is different from what we discussed in the chambers. And this also played out with this tax reforms. Can you walk us through how the Senate typically processes a bill from committee report to the final stage when it's sent for presidential assent? At what point are members expected to debate or vote on specific clauses?
You asked me a question. You said, why am I giving up on Nigeria? So that was what I was answering. I was telling you why. Do you understand? And then I was talking directly to the Senate, National Assembly, to do the right thing. That's why I said what I said, to show my disappointment with the system, that he's making the same mistake the former president made. Now, and then they are not helping him by not passing the right legislation that will promote true democracy. You understand me? So that's why I answered, I gave you that response. So now, I have said before that what the legislature should do is to make the correct amendment. Do you understand? That is the only thing they need to do. Without it, I don't know what's going to happen in 2027. I'm worried. I'm worried about. Okay, please. They are there to serve the interest of their constituencies, and then the only solution to this problem is what Abaribe suggested, so that the constituents will know who is representing them. You understand? Even though these senators are under the control of the governors. And then people are losing sight of the fact that the governors control the National Assembly, not even the president. And the president has 30 governors in his kitty, because the governors control the parties at the state level. So most of the time they dictate, I was in the Senate, they dictate what the senators do in the National Assembly. There is really no independence in the National Assembly, to be honest with you. So we should look at where the problem lies and how to solve it, going forward. That is why there must be that mandatory electronic transmission of votes real time, so that real people who the people voted will emerge, not those who the governors want, because the governors have the capability to write results, to rig elections in their various states. So that will end.
Okay. Senator Achanu, I think what we're trying to understand is the procedure, how are laws being passed in the Senate? Because what we're saying is we often would hear, minority caucus said, this one did not agree. At what point are they supposed to, go through the clauses? And when does a voice vote count? Because we've seen a lot of voice votes recently. How does the Senate decide what laws will be passed via voice notes instead of, going through some other form of physical voting, So walk us through the process of passing laws and how the Senate decides, or how the National Assembly decides what laws should be passed with voice votes, because it's a bit confusing for us.
Well, each assembly, I was in the 8th assembly, each assembly comes up with their own procedures. So that's why I said that I don't know what transpired, that I don't know what the regulations are in this assembly that made Abaribe to stand down. That's why I made that comment. Do you understand? So I've not been following the internal workings of the National Assembly since I left, because I really left. I was disappointed. That's why I left. So having said that, I don't know what the procedures are right now, what internal laws guide the debate inside the Senate. So whatever it is, it should be in the interest of the constituents that they represent. So, and they know that, and they can, if they are not happy with what's going on, of course they will challenge whatever rules and regulations guide them. That's the character of the Senate.
Okay.
They will challenge it.
All right.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to. Okay. Aside from the current one that has been passed, looking at the electoral reforms, my question to you would now look into the political landscape. So far, so good. There's been so many killings here and there. Just this morning, we talked about another one again in Benue State. Not forgetting to the one that just happened in another state as well. It's just going back and forth. And yet, we see the interest.
Come again? I didn't hear you very well.
I'm talking about the insecurity, the killings. The killings and the insecurity that's affecting Nigerians in different states. Yet we see that politicking still remains at the top of the conversation. What's your take on that? Do you think that the administration might want to possibly relax a little bit on politicking and focus on ensuring that Nigerians are safe?
If you remember my last interview, that's exactly what I said, that they're distracting the government from doing what they're supposed to do. But what insecurity? You can't have insecurity unless the government doesn't want to tackle it. So let's be honest. Like, let me give you an example of Imo State, where I come from, where I contested against APC. The insecurity everywhere in the world is because government allows it. As far as I'm concerned, because in Imo State, all the areas where you had insecurity were the areas where they wrote results. So maybe they didn't want, I don't know, I'm not sure, but maybe they didn't want elections to take place there. So most of the places where they wrote where they garnered all their votes from are places where the insecurity was thriving. Okay, now I'm surprised that, anyway, I'm going to say more in my press conference. I'm going to call a world press conference, maybe in the next 2-3 days in the US, which I'll distribute to news networks in Nigeria and say my piece, because I'm not happy. I'm really disappointed.
And your take on the $9 million payment made to a PR firm to keep Nigeria going, especially on the international scene, the $9 million lobbyist firm?
I hope I answered your question on insecurity.
No, I'm talking about the lobbyist firm, the update on the lobbyists. I'm sure, I don't know if you're aware of that.
I don't know what's going on with the lobby. I don't know what's going on with the lobby in America. I'm not part of it. I'm not in APC, so I'm not part of their lobby. I only know what I read in the newspapers. But I hope I answered your question on insecurity. Insecurity is government. If government wants to stop it. Didn't America give a Christmas present to the terrorists? If government wants to stop it, they know what to do.
All right.
So that's my take on it,
Senator Nathan Achonu, thank you for joining us this morning on Breakfast Central. We're looking forward to seeing your world media report and having conversations with you after that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're going to break now. We'll come back with breakfast headlines. We still have the front pages of the newspaper to be reviewed with our in-house analysts, so please stay tuned for that.
For the front pages of the newspapers, we'd like you to join us by calling the number you find on the screen and let us know what your thoughts are concerning the big stories we'll find on the front pages of the newspapers. Joining us this morning is a man whose introduction could take us an entire hour just to ensure that we get it right. But we're not going to spend time doing that. Let's just introduce him as public affairs analyst, the respected, the one and only Mr. Sheson Okwade joins us. Sheson Okwade, Ekaro.
You're welcome, yes, sir. A man with many feathers in his
That's why I said, if he removes this cap now,
the introduction will take 1 hour. Avid golfer, chartered accountant.
Come on.
Tiger Woods of Ikeja. Of Ikeja for now.
Maybe I'll follow the path of my sister and say Ekaro to my people.
Ekaro,
good to have you as well. So many things happening in the papers.
Many things.
That means your analysis, your expert analysis. So where do we start off from?
Anyway,
let's
start with Al Jazeera.
Okay.
Senate makes U-turn.
Bold headline there. Senate makes U-turn, okays e-transmission with condition. But if...
Had it been? Can it be? Perhaps.
Maybe. Could it be? Don't mind us, please. Let's just
challenge it.
Let's just guys.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Upon careful examination of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, fresh issues have emerged, the Chief Whip says. And this is, of course, still looking at election results because the Senate President had said they have now approved e-transmission, electronic transmission. But should it be in Kanekwe, perhaps that didn't go through. They can now use manual as backup. Mr. Okwade, let's start with that story.
Is this a victory for democracy? Are you celebrating?
First of all, you don't even know whether Mr. Okwade wanted real-time transmission first.
True. So did you see? All of us want real-time.
No, you don't know that, so let's not speak for him. Were you in support of real-time transmission? Well, the advocacy for real-time transmission?
I'm not the Gen Z person, I'm a Gen Alpha. So it's to tell you that when it comes to e-transmission, we're part of the people that were asking the people at the Senate, are they for us or they are against us?
Oh, okay.
Because, you know, for every young person, and you know the percentage of the youth that you have in there, that they want everything as in preparing Indomie, fast. So you are just voting, you want to see it online real time. So validate what, God bless you, that's the street language. As the thing they ought, may they see her. So that's the way it goes. So I'm part and parcel of people that have been an advocate of e-transmission of the result. And you ask yourself, what is actually the big deal in this? The last 4 years, we've expected, and it's part of the things that we've been holding the government on. How much have we improved on our infrastructure? Because, you know, I'm sure this will rely on the internet service here and there to make things happen before we hear another story. Just this morning, I was listening to a news where CBN and NCC are consolidating to have a draft framework on field recharge cards and the likes. And I asked myself, at this jet age, are we still experiencing? And I know people still experience it. It speaks volume to our infrastructure. How much have we actually worked? Don't forget that this issue of transmission of results lies on when the whole thing has actually been concluded. At the last election, we saw where people are actually using torchlights to do some of this result collation and compilation. So you ask yourself, if you've been at that particular spot from morning till that evening, hope not in the evening when you're about to upload, your phone will go down because there is no power supply. So a lot of things had to actually be put in place, not just succumbing to prayer. Because as far as I'm concerned, I ask myself, why will Senate now come up to say, now we are having a reverse? I love the word being used by Jazeera, say you make a U-turn. So you know you're actually going in the wrong direction. Thank God that the people are able to show them the next available U-turn.
The Google map.
The Google map to show them this is the path you need to go. You are not actually doing it right. But we want a situation where that clause will be properly monitored, because the next thing you will hear, you know, it's good you have a backup, and we are not disputing that fact. But I hope people will not capitalize on it to say, at least what the law says is that where there are failures, we want to establish the failure beyond reasonable doubt. What we're trying to establish here is just transparency, accuracy, accountability that people want. So you can imagine as we are speaking, people are hearing. So it's not that it's doctored. People are not actually saying, AI. It's not AI, it's not anything. So as the result is actually being uploaded, everybody is seeing it at the local government, not the one we used to have before. They will move from the ward to the local government. In between that ward and local government, anything can happen.
2 hours delay.
Somebody is moving. Between the local government and the states is another transmission. And between the states, you are waiting for professor to fly. I remember the last time they said, okay, we are waiting for a result from Bauchi. The flight is actually being delayed. Here, at this point in time, flight is not being delayed. As you are uploading right from the ward, is eating the portal of INEC, and everybody is. It's not like having a shared document.
Put it inside his bag.
Nothing as that. In fact, that paper you are holding is just for documentation purpose.
Absolutely.
The result is already up there. So I'm sure they too reviewed the process and consider that e-transmission is actually the way to go. But we should not stop at we've approved it. Let's wait. Most of our problem is not just having this issue of signing things into law. It is the implementation. It is then somebody will see somewhere that something actually must go wrong for them to explore the fallback or the backup that has actually been provided. But it's a good thing, a good step in the right direction.
Are there other areas of the electoral amendment law that you have taken interest in? For example, the penalty for vote buying is now, I believe, 5 million naira.
And then to 2 million.
And then they haven't said anything about, it used to be 500,000 naira before. So you can pay them out of pocket.
They now took it to 5 million. I think they argued that they should bring it down to 2 million.
And then there's also the issue about early campaigning. There's no penalty for that. It's more like INEC is appealing to their moral. Please search your heart. Don't campaign early.
You see, when the people to actually, when the people making the law are the one that you are making the law against, you don't expect anything different. So you should expect a safe landing.
Campaign, people might think, it's harmless, it does nothing. It really does.
It goes a long way. You see, part of the problem...
Governance also has a tendency to pause.
Part of the problem I have with our leaders is do what I say and don't do what I do. So the fact remains that you are still in 2026. Governance, we are losing structure of governance in states, and what everybody is looking at is either second term or you are strategizing or who is actually coming in, and people will start seeing the gap. I'm sure a lot of infrastructure that has actually been put up will start giving way now because nobody monitors that. What everybody is actually after.
The coastal road is already flooding. It's taking its real name of a coastal road.
When I saw the video yesterday, I'm like, why are people criticizing it? This is a coastal road, and you are expected to have water, covering
coastal road.
Oh, that's why it's called coastal road.
Wow. That's just on the relaxed road. But the fact remains that our leaders should try as much as possible to be sensitive to things, not the one that is just impacting on them alone. I expect that this issue of vote buying should be criminalized. People should actually go to jail for actually doing vote buying. But that will not fly because there are different approaches to it.
We don't have enough. We don't even have enough jails to accommodate.
We will build now. What stops us? If it has to do with that particular thing, then we build more so that people can know. You see, the major problem we keep having is that there are no consequences for wrongdoing. So most of the time, people will say, is it 2 million? Just leave out those things. Nothing will happen. But remember when, if they pick you up for wrongdoing, you won't pay any fine.
If they pick somebody up, don't say you, please.
If they pick...
Superstitious.
I don't understand.
Leave it alone.
Okay, if they pick somebody...
Are you going down? No, I'm going up.
I'm in Nigeria.
Okay, you're Nigerian. Okay. So, if they pick someone...
Pick your enemy.
No, don't let's go to the enemy now, Jenga. At least... Yeah, they say you should bless your enemy and don't get your... So if they pick someone up and rather than you paying penalty in terms of fee, you have to do community service, and there is this coverage on social media where somebody is actually sweeping the floor, is actually packing the waste bin and the likes. Although some will go trending like someone did in the past to say it's community service, that there is actually serving the nation. But that will be there for life. You're able to put the narrative that what this person is actually doing is consequences for, he's paying the price of the wrongdoing he has actually, because when you monetize some of these things, the people in question, I asked myself,
just
2 million that you're talking, or 5 million.
The budget of 100 million.
You just budget 100 million for vote buying, and when you settle that and when they pick you up, you just go ahead and do it. If somebody can set aside as high as 100 million to buy the registration form, so what are you talking of to definitely take care of vote buying? I feel rather than attaching cost to that, we should criminalize it in such a way that their companies too should pay the price. You know, most of the time some people will be picked up and they will not just be out there to say, this is the person that sent me, because they know it's actually
should they apply to those that also collect gala and malt?
Gala and malt?
Yes, as we witnessed in Anambra State in the last elections. I mean, it's a sort of inducement. I don't know.
Well, look, I don't know about that. Let's go to another story quickly, because we still have to
on the front page of Al Jazeera Week.
Yes, there's one that I want us to look at. It sounds much more like an irony or an ironical story. Reps slam teaching hospitals for abandoning research.
Have they finished treating malaria?
No, have they even paid them? Let's start from that. Have they paid them?
They are now telling them that
to slam them for abandoning research.
It's almost like NFA, Ministry of Sports, slamming Super Eagles for not winning World Cup, or some of their players for not winning Ballon d'Or. When they are still fighting for match bonus.
Joe, you see, we keep saying this, that misplacement of, in as much as we understand that we should have some of this thing on, have you actually put in place those infrastructure to actually make those research to work? How much of the research in time past that some of these lecturers, professors, have actually brought to bear have you utilized in areas of specialization? You ask yourself, people are not encouraged because you go ahead, dissipate a lot of energy to bring out a particular thing. Do we even believe in our own? If a foreigner brings out something and we bring it out in our own local way of saying this is the route at which we... I remember when research was put up on the use of, is it Zobo drink? Yes. A professor came out with that
even yesterday, research, yes.
Said, and I'm like, how much have we actually encouraged that kind of thing? How much have we promoted those things where people will know that, okay, this is our local thing that we need to do? I remember during COVID, a lot of people were saying, we can handle this thing locally with some of the traditional things that we have. And a lot of people said, no. It is the one specified by the WHO. And people came out and say, is it not an avenue for you to make? Because the way you see a foreigner and the way we react to things are quite different.
Yeah.
You can't compare it. You see a guy, how many white men can stay under the sun the way you and I will stay under the sun?
I once hosted an event, and the theme of the event was clinical research, the underrepresentation of Africans in clinical research in sub-Saharan Africa. So imagine, in fact, we're going to break. When we come back, we'll talk about this a little more, and then we'll head to our next story. Very important. We'll be right back.
We must sincerely apologize for that long break. We did have to take care of some technical issues, but welcome back. Mr. Olusegun Okwade is still here with us, and we need to move straight to the next paper. Olive, you were looking at the leadership, if I'm right?
Yes. Before, let me just take a few comments. I think it's a very important comment I need to take.
All right.
On YouTube, Olumide Alade says, it's been a lot of comments. Olumide Alade says, the body known as INEC does not appear to function with full independence. Having publicly committed to the electronic transmission of election results, a measure supported by the majority of voters, it would have been appropriate for the legislature to respect that decision and allow the commission to discharge its responsibilities without interference. Pius Amako says, Good morning, beautiful team of News Central. I greet you all from Lekki. Madam Olive radiates and shines like a diamond. Thank you so much.
I hope you also read comments that compliment us. And it's
of
not
course,
just
I
your
read.
own personal
They've not complimented you. Don't be
Guys,
angry.
please, we need comments.
Thank you, Pius.
No, you didn't say it well. Guys, we need compliment real time.
Real
time.
Yeah.
Everything
That's a big one.
Translate the compliments.
Pius Amago says, meanwhile, what happened yesterday at the National Assembly? I hope we have not gone back to the era of glitches. Nigerians want to be able to choose their leaders. So thank you very much for that, Pius. Let's go to the leadership newspaper. On the front page, reactions at Senator Okezi's transmission of results, retains manual collation as backup. Wike, by God's grace, Tinubu's mediation in Rivers will be the last one.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Here we are again.
Why did he have to put by God's grace?
By the grace of God.
Sure himself.
You see, once anybody starts coming to their work and you are doing by the special grace of God, I will never downplay the grace of God because I'm a Christian. Yeah. But sometimes
they use it
indicative of the fact that they are using it as a cover-up instead of them to do what they are meant to do.
Especially carpenters.
By the grace of God, I will deliver.
We'll finish tomorrow. By the grace
mechanic.
of God.
By the grace of God, your car will be ready today.
My mechanic will first ask you, Mr. Gbengaibole once saying, where are you now? So if you say you are in Ikeja, I will be emotional. So you can lie.
You see this issue of grace of God, people abuse it. Like you said, we are Christian and it's supposed to we are just committing it in the hands of God.
So do you think that they are abusing this grace of God in Rivers State? Because they are saying that by the grace of God,
yes, they have over-abused it now. They have over-abused it. So putting it in God's hand, we want to wait for what happened, and they will now. You can't. Let me say that you can't rubbish God's grace. You would rather be disgraced, because if anything now fall back, will you say that God's grace is absent in that decision of yours? And that's why politicians, when they are doing some of these things, a lot of us just laugh. You don't just bring God in the mix of things that you know deep down your heart will not go that route which you have actually proposed. So when you fail, who do you want to stay? You now say it's devil. Meanwhile, you have actually, notified people that you've actually, and these are part of the problems that we keep having. One thing we will say is that come together. The essence of leading us is to give good governance to the people and make them enjoy the dividend, the benefit of what it is to have all these natural resources that we are endowed with. Whatever, when you see some of these politicians fight amongst one another, it's for personal interest and not for the interest of the people. So bringing God's grace therein, I pray God grace will be sufficient for them, if at all. We'll have it across.
I don't pray about God's grace sufficient for them. It's people of Rivers State that need God's grace, not these leaders that have then thrown them into
because I can imagine what is actually happening in Rivers.
Terrible, really terrible.
It's really not something to write home about.
Now, special forces will be deployed in Kwara and Niger, according to the CDS. Curb election year spending spree. Central Bank warns governors. Atiku Makinde visits IBB in Minna. APC Congresses, crisis looms in Ondo, parallel exercise imminent. Heartbreaking story. Brothers arrested for killing and burying their sibling in shallow grave.
This is similar to what happened to Joseph. Very terrible.
It's just that Joseph's only survived. They didn't kill him. How did we get here?
When we are becoming too materialistic in everything, it's because we encourage that in the populace. Nobody wants to care you make your money these days. It's about you just bringing a porch.
Some landlords, there's some, not all, some landlords.
In fact, it's becoming crazy these days where you see people just going as far as, ×3 your rent. And you ask yourself, where are we? Is it? I don't understand. So what you are invariably doing, and I was having a conversation with an agent yesterday, and he said, Uncle, the fact remains that the internet fraudsters are being packaged by agents before the landlords because they all need that money.
They are now called forex traders.
They are now forex traders. So businessmen, mogul, and the guy comes with a very clean car, clears off his shave and he looks neat. And he gets in after the second year, he starts struggling when business are no longer booming to pay your rent, and it becomes war, he won't come out. So because we are too materialistic, people just want to impress the other party.
I need to go and look for the story. I need to go and look for the story so I can see, because it doesn't make sense when I hear the stories like this of you.
But this is not the first time.
But this one, it seems it may not be about money. So operatives of the Imo State Police Command have arrested 2 brothers, Lucky and Uzoma Amadi, for allegedly killing their elder brother, Orindu, and burying him in a shallow grave. The incident occurred in the Umuokpe kindred of Umuchimlanyiri village in Imo State. Right? Now, the youth of the community have forced the brothers to exhume the corpse of Orindu buried in a shallow grave. According to them, they're saying that the 2 brothers are blaming the now deceased brother for the death of their father 10 years ago. We don't know the circumstances. We don't have the full picture. But you think your father died 10 years ago and this person was a reason why your father died. So you now decide 10 years later to kill him and bury him in a shallow grave.
They are not giving you the in-depth of it. If their father is still alive, that means they are looking at some things they would have achieved, which allegedly their brother has denied them of. And that's why they feel, let's kill this man because he actually, murdered our future. And seeing him alive, I'm just adding 1 and 2 together with my brain to like, there is still something underneath, which is materialistic. I just feel, because how will you, except they just claim they are brothers and they are not brothers by blood. You wait and you feel that the best thing to do is to kill a fellow man. I'm not even if it's not your brother, to wake up and kill human being.
And then they just, after killing him, they still had the mind to still remain there. Like nothing will happen. Let's quickly go to the Guardian newspaper. On the front page of the Guardian, INEC again is the big story. Russia denies report of Nigerian mercenaries killed in Ukraine war. Zoning rule, court battles test opposition cohesion ahead of 2027. Experts urge federal government to criminalize ransom payments to terrorists. We'll come back to talk about that. Academics rule selective implementation of 40% pay rise. Lagos, 12 other states to experience longer rainfall in 2026, says NIMET. So the one we are saying is going to get worse.
It has started. There was no dry. There was no Hamatan. There was no dry season.
Yes. Yeah. Lagos State government seeks food and water vendors order support in war against cholera. They're asking for you to be more hygienic in the process of carrying out your business. Nigeria spent 3.53 trillion naira importing raw materials locally available. Another topic.
Massive.
Really massive. CISLAC urges action as Nigeria dips in global corruption rating. What we just celebrated recently, we've taken a dip.
Wait, dip.
We are now 142.
Meaning we are falling.
Yes, I'll check the numbers. If you can quickly help me do the Googling.
Anyway.
So, court bars Osun local government funds utilization pending end of trial. All right, so Nigeria's, let me read it here. CISLAC calls for stronger actions. The civil society organization, that's the Civil Society Legislative Advocacy Center, has called for stronger action against corruption in Nigeria in the wake of the release of the latest Corruption Perception Index of the Transparency International on Tuesday. It was reported that Nigeria fell 2 places to 142nd out of 182 countries in the 2025 CPI. Nigeria's performance is in the latest ranking was officially announced by CISLAC TI's chapter in the country. The country scored 26 out of 100, below the global average of 43, and trailed 33 other countries, African nations in the ranking. So, our country, they said Nigeria's score remained the same as in 2024. Its drop in ranking highlights stagnation in anti-corruption efforts. So it doesn't seem like there's been progress made in this regard.
But the former league president said he was coming to fight corruption, as rightly put. Former league president Muhammadu Buhari. The current administration said when they come in, they would ensure that corruption is no more.
Every administration always gives room to that. But how many people have you seen being punished for some of this misappropriation of funds at any level? If I will give you what is the story behind the alleged removal of the former Minister of Humanitarian Affairs. Do we hear any story about that?
She welcomed somebody from New York, the mayor of New York.
And then maybe by 2027 you consider.
But they'll tell you that a high-profile person like the former Justice Minister is facing trial.
So
that's fighting corruption.
A lot of this trial, where does it end? That's the question we need to ask. How many people have actually been prosecuted? Yaya Bello and the like. So we have a lot of some of these things that are just standing out. So whether we have this rating by TCI or the likes, the fact remains that we know that in terms of corruption allegation, we are not. Look at Malami. We're talking about over 200 and something trillion, a billion in his custody with several properties
Ordinary
everywhere.
Nigerians too, like Joe said last week, and I think that's Joe's motto for this year, that we are our own problems.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure Joe has seen
and
this
Nigeria's
video
problem.
clip on social media. These pranksters that go around planting money with the recorded camera, and then
I think I'll use that for wake up
somebody's
tomorrow.
mother, somebody's auntie. Say I kept it there. It's my money.
And I will just use it as trap. Trap artist.
I saw the video. There was even one I saw where a lady actually left the wallet, on the table, and the owner of the shop was calling her. Another lady was there and said, "No, it's my wallet." I said, "No." So the other lady said, "No, it's mine." And they started arguing, and I'm like, what does not belong to you? Why are you just laying all the claim to it? And lo and behold, they just brought the camera that it was actually a prank, and the lady felt, embarrassed that it doesn't. So I think it should just be it's contentment that we actually need, because a lot of the people taking some of this money, you can't stay in 2 rooms, you can't drive 2 vehicles, even if you have several escorts. All those things is inside one vehicle, you will still stay.
And it's vanity upon vanity.
At the end of the day, you will sleep one day, you will not wake up. People will ask you, what are the legacy you've laid down? It is a lot of them will claim.
Mercedes-Benz is your legacy.
The big car you're driving currently, come to think about it, few years back, a car like Tesla was not out there. So if you feel that you are in the range of Benz, nobody talked about all this Benz, G-Wagon, and the like. People are talking of EV vehicles, where you see and when you look at the sophistication of some of these vehicles, you can't compare it with what you have. So we keep telling them it's about the legacy you leave, and it's about the people you are able to build and impact on, not those structures.
For generations.
Because the structures you have today, in the next few years, you discover that...
we have a story that, unfortunately, we're almost out of time, but I'm just going to quickly touch on it. Experts urge federal government to criminalize ransom payments to terrorists. Senate, now, if you recall, there was sometime in 2022, it was reported that the passage of the Terrorism Prevention Act 2013 Amendment Bill 2022 followed the adoption of the report of the Senate Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters. There was actually a law that forbade payment of ransom, to abduct. I think it's called the Terrorism Prevention Act. So it was amended in 2022 to prohibit the payment of ransom to kidnappers, abductors, or terrorists. And under the amendment, anyone who transfers funds, makes payments, or colludes with kidnappers for ransom is guilty of a felony and liable on conviction to a term of imprisonment of not less than 15 years.
In the same light, they should also criminalize payment of mobilization fees to Nigerian police for doing their job, payment for higher education, payment for biro to write statements.
And it should also be criminalized for a government not to be able to provide security to its citizens.
In fact, that should be the first thing, because it's their primary responsibility as entrenched even in the Constitution. But are we getting the security allowed? A lot of state governors, they have access to security vote. What are they actually utilizing some of those things for? We all wait most of the time for the center. We are waiting the directive, any little thing. They rush to Aso Rock and notify Mr. President. But you are the CSO of that particular state. Security votes are actually being given to you. Internally generated revenue are there. Increased fact with the level of subsidy removal that we have there. And we are still talking of insecurity everywhere. I think it's something that you see most of the time we have some of these things in the document. But when it comes to implementation, the people to implement it are the one that you are asking to actually do what is actually
if this amended Terrorism Prevention Act is fully operational, what we'll see is, it will be pure chaos. We're wrapping up the show, and it's very important for me to take this comment on YouTube as we wrap up the show. First of all, Mokunye Chukwuemeka says, why will you make anti-corruption progress when a Yahaya Bello is heading to Mecca, beware, etc.? We're not serious in this country. And the final tweet to wrap up Breakfast Central today from Shian Moore says, Benga is looking dashingly handsome. Wow. And Joe looks calm and well collected in his sparkling white shirt and green tie. Thank you so much.
You have the favorite commenter this year, and it's just February.
I like the way you commented in real time.
Thank you.
That is an transmission of the result.
We appreciate it. We really, really appreciate it. And on that note,
Yeah, on that note, we'll draw the curtains on today's show. I'd like to wish you a happy Valentine's Day in advance. And for the men on this set, if you give birth in November, we know what you did in February.
In 9 months' time,
So in 9 months'
we will
time.
come visiting. We'll see you tomorrow.
Everybody has a
Bye.
November baby, we know what you do.